gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for being with us at this end of this wonderful conference. I'm not going to say we finished with the best for the last, but let's admit that. I've had the chance to prepare this panel ahead of time with this very knowledgeable gentleman, talking about a topic of interest to all here, which is diversifying mineral supply and developing processing hubs in Africa and Central Asia. We have very good expertise from different continents and different jurisdictions. I'm going to let each of you maybe introduce yourself very briefly in a couple of words, and therefore we'll take after with the different questions. Please, Ambassador Pham, if you can just say a few words about yourself.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm Peter Pham, former United States Ambassador and Special Envoy for the Great Lakes and Sahel regions of Africa, and now in my post-government life, member of the board of various companies, including HPX, the Ivanhoe Company's exploratory and development company, of which I'm the non-executive chairman.
Thank you. Jean-Raymond Boule, please.
Thank you, Remy. My name is Jean Boule. I'm the chairman of Jean Boule Group. We're in mining, medtech, biotech, and agriculture power. Quite a diversified group. Our main business is mining. We've been lucky enough to have had some great discoveries, particularly Voisey's Bay in Labrador, which in fact Robert Friedland was my partner. We've also restarted the economy of Sierra Leone with two mines, a bauxite mine after the war, a bauxite mine and a rutile mine, titanium. We've had also many other discoveries, including ilmenite titanium in Madagascar, Toliar Sands. So we are quite a special group in that we've been lucky enough to have made major multi-billion-dollar discoveries.
Thank you, Jean. Roland, if you can say a few words about yourself.
Nice to meet you. My name is Roland Guitrid, and I'm the chairman of Levista Energy, which is a refiner of lithium in the European Union. Our first plant is right now in feasibility study, and it will be in Germany, in Emden at the border of Germany and the Netherlands. And it will produce 40 tons of LCE, mainly hydroxide, 30,000 tons, and 10,000 tons of lithium carbonate battery grade.
Thank you. Craig, you're next on the line.
Yes, thank you very much. So my name is Craig Sherba. I'm the CEO of a company called Next Source Materials. What we have is a graphite mine in Madagascar. It's been operational since March of 2023. We're also constructing the downstream anode processing facility for natural graphite in the country of Mauritius, and have very aspirational plans of expanding that anode capability around the world.
Christopher, you are at every single conference. I'm not sure you need an introduction, but please give us a few words by yourself.
I'm Christopher Eccleston from Hogarth & Company, and I'm an equities analyst and commodity strategist in London.
Very good. And last but not least, Tariq.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. I'm Sahibzada Tariq. I'm a founder and CEO of two mining companies, Pirana Company and TM Resources. We operate in Pakistan, and we have properties for copper, graphite, and lithium.
So maybe I'll start with you, Ambassador, with the first question. We're talking about diversifying mineral supply chains, looking at processing hub, your expertise, especially on Africa. I wanted to know, what do you see as the biggest obstacle to the development of responsible, resilient mineral processing chains, especially in Africa, and how can government work with the private sector to develop them sustainably?
If you don't mind my taking the liberty, so let me give you three quick answers to that one question. I think there are three things. First and foremost, energy.
Okay.
In many developing countries, Africa I know best, but others, it's a question of getting the energy and to do these things. I have at home 2 refrigerators that consume more electricity in a year than the average family in Africa. So that energy piece must be resolved. Secondly, infrastructure. It's not enough to have the resources. The super region has abundant resources, but how do you bring that to market in a way that is not only cost effective, but increasingly, as the market demands, responsible? And then thirdly, the question of investment. Getting the investment not just for the energy and the infrastructure, but also to develop the human capital necessary so that these regions truly benefit from what they have in the subsoil. And the last part, and I'll wrap it up very, how can you do this? And I think we're beginning to see a new way forward in mining. That's a true partnership. And I'm no longer a US government official, but speaking of a program the US government has done, the building of the Lobito corridor that other speakers have spoken about in the plenary, between Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zambia, and eventually expanding to other corridors. Infrastructure that provides energy, much of it renewable.
I don't know.
Transportation to get things to market.
Very much.
And then finally, building up a holistic method, multi-user infrastructure that benefits these countries.
Okay.
And one last plug,
it's
we recently, one of the companies I'm associated with, Ivanhoe Mines, recently sent its first shipment of copper to port at Lobito. It took 8 days, arriving last day of 2023. Previously, that went by truck all the way down to Durban, a journey that took several weeks. We now did it in 8 days in a far greener, more responsible manner. So, and that's a partnership. It wasn't the US imposing. The US government helped facilitate it. The private sector came in, and it's a partnership of equals with the countries involved.
No, that's great. Maybe turning to you, Jean. I mean, you're leading a very diversified group, present in many jurisdictions, whether from graphite, looking at green magnesium and others. You know, when you're looking at Saudi Arabia in the middle of all those potential processing hubs and maybe centralizing them, what are you think the best thing to highlight? Professor Pham mentioned logistics, mentioned infrastructure, investment, and cheap energy, which is something that characterizes Saudi Arabia. Can you give us a little bit of your vision of what Saudi Arabia can play here?
Well, first of all, I very much agree with Peter on partnerships. And while we're on the subject, first of all, this country has been blessed with abundant resources, more than just about any other country in the world. And the other blessing from God is its people. And I would like to congratulate Excellency Minister Al-Kariev, as well as His Excellency Minister Al-Muda, for having now established the best, and I'll make that a declaration. This is the best mining conference in the world. I know that there are 3 others, but with due respect to the Canadians and South Africans and Australians, this is now the best venue and the best organized with the highest quality people. In France, they say chapeau. They've done it. So I am, and I'm sure all of people in this industry are very impressed, and particularly the way that this fantastic speech that the Excellency made telling us that we're part of a family, we're always welcome here, and to come and invest. So we all voted with our feet, and here we are. As to the rest of it, yes, Peter, I agree, it's about partnership. I'll give you an example. After the war, we were asked to try and get the mines going in Sierra Leone. We had the backing of the US government. I'm in fact the director of Corporate Council in Africa. We meet once a year, 2,000 people, to get the heads of state of Africa and its people together with the administration, which you're familiar with, Peter. So we do that. So we had the backing of Americans, we had the backing of European through SISMIN. And then, of course, you know, you've got to make sure that the local people are happy. Whether it's building mosques, building churches, you've got to make sure that the central government gets what it wants out of it. And so it's basically a puzzle that you have to round the edges and put together on many levels. And then the financing from OPEC, financing from IFC. Very important to bring IFC into projects. You need them as partners. And if possible, you've got to give some of the upside to the local people, that they know that, okay, if this works, you're going to make a lot of money. But they need to make a lot of money too at the same time. So how do you do that? Well, you have many instances where they have some sort of carried interest, or sometimes, for instance, we're in Greenland. We have a few discoveries in Greenland, including feldspar, and the government of Denmark and Greenland have actually bought part of a company. And so we're true partners. We both tend to do well. And I think we need to make sure that whichever country you work in, you need to make sure that they have a stake with you within your company. So I think it's very important because that certainly didn't happen in the past. It's beginning to happen now. And then to the partnership and what people get out of it. After discovering Voisey's Bay, we had to deal with a lot of different issues, and one of them was the First Nations, the Inuit and Innu. So we spent a long time negotiating, and at the beginning it was quite aggressive, but in the end we signed an agreement which today is a template for all mining companies in Canada. The first place they go to is our agreement. And basically, we gave the right of refusal for first contracts to all the Inuits and Innu. So they have a first right of refusal, all subcontracts. So, and it's, when we went to Labrador, they had a 40% unemployment rate because the fish had all gone. Well, today, the place is absolutely booming because of the entrepreneurial spirit. So you've got to put all these pieces together. It's not easy. And you've got to be true partners. You've got to be transparent. And that's extremely important. And at the end of the day, it's also having the right scientists. It's not just going to a country. It's actually making sure that you get the best chance of a discovery. Okay. Sorry, I'm not too long-winded. We have friends here who need to also speak. Please, thank you very much.
Maybe transitioning to you, Roland. When we look at different processing hubs, I know as a lithium refiner, you actually studied different possibilities for implementation of your projects. Germany, France, now you're here in the Middle East. What is to you the competitive advantage that the Middle East can have, in Saudi Arabia especially, and what would be the road forward onto this?
Well, the first thing is the mining. You have 500 million Europeans, which are pretty close, and they're going to need a lot of raw material, especially lithium. So developing a mining industry will take time, a large mining industry, but that's very important. And the second, I think, opportunistic. Europe will need 500,000 tons of refined lithium. It doesn't by 2030. It doesn't produce 1 ton as of today. So a lot of the contracts we are negotiating for a plant right now, we can't even contract them. We won't be able to honor them in full. We'll have to give to other partners, mostly Chinese right now. So some of our contracts will start next year, will be told in China until our plant in Europe is operational. And I think that's where Saudi Arabia, which is a refining hub in petrochemicals, which has advantage in cost in gas, reagents, electricity, can be part of the, I think, EMA, European Middle East, where if you have your marketing team in the European Union with the contracts, you can put a part of this contracting strategy in the Middle East, in Saudi. So technically, look at the movement of lithium. It will go mainly from Australia to the ports of Europe. So if you have a stop on the way in Saudi Arabia through the Red Sea, and you sell it to the final consumer in Europe until the market here becomes big enough that it's self-sustained, it's an opportunity, I think. So I see it more as a joint venture with Europe, or the US, it works as well, a partnership.
No, very good, this idea of partnership, different jurisdiction. When we talk about different supply chains and processing hub, the key concept here is vertical integration. I think, turning to you, Craig, you have graphite operations in Madagascar. At the same time, you're developing processing hubs nearby in the Mauritius island. When you look at this element of vertical integration of supply chain, what is feasible to be done, and what are the best practices that you'd like to highlight?
Absolutely, so thank you. So vertical integration, I think, is absolutely essential if you're looking at critical materials. They're called critical materials because they're critical for industrialization moving forward here right now. And really it's about security of supply, and from a business perspective, security of price. To have the security of supply, if you can have the actual raw material that goes into the processing material, you have a competitive advantage. There's many OEMs that were left in the lurch a couple of years ago just because of the silicon shortage. So really just a part that's only costing a couple of dollars for the actual cost of a very expensive vehicle, production lines were stopped. So you have to have that kind of critical supply chain to go in there vertically integrated, I think is very important for that. From a business perspective, you also want cost certainty. And the cost certainty is important because for these critical battery materials, it's not just about delivering the actual physical quantum of material, you actually have to do a value add process portion to that. So there is some technological things that go in between there. Because of that, it's a complicated process and it requires you to have offtake. To have offtake, you have to have a steady price base, and if you actually have vertical integration, you can help control part of that price base. What I think is really important now is really kind of establishing global hubs, I guess, for processing capability, because what that does is it really addresses that security of price. What the processing hubs do is if you have a mine is located wherever you can find the mineral resources, and I heard actually a little anecdote yesterday that you don't find too many miners that take a subway to work. They're in very remote locations. Processing hubs, however, you can put wherever you want them to. What you have to do is you put it in a matrix for the logistics, and really what makes from a business perspective really a lot of sense. What's interesting about the kingdom that we're in right now is that they're very well situated basically to process where most of these minerals are coming from, which is Africa, and then go into the European Union, into North America as well. The processing component as well, it requires a lot of energy, it requires infrastructure for road systems, a highly educated workforce, so on and so forth. So that infrastructure, to pick an excellent place for that. A processing hub, you can get economies of scale with the more of these groups that you have, and you can actually get synergies where a waste stream from one product can actually be a product stream for another. So they're much more efficient. So I think moving forward in the future here, all of these critical battery materials will have to be processed in processing centers, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is very well located for that.
Well, thank you, Craig. When we prepared for this panel, Christopher, we had a fascinating conversation on the geopolitical dimension of processing hubs. When you look, obviously, the alternative to Saudi Arabia could be an alternative to China here. There's a series of issues in Europe in terms of being able to develop supply chains and mineral processing. Where do you see what Saudi Arabia could fit, and what are the geopolitical considerations to this?
Yeah, thank you. One of the problems we have is that China has essentially a policy that I call the mothership policy, which is basically, it doesn't matter where it's mined, it has to be taken back to the mothership for processing. And that's a very China-centric view. Results in the value added dropping off in China, because in many cases the mining activity is not actually the value added activity, it is the processing and the downward use of the supply chain of the end products. And China's made sure that that has happened. And we've seen increasing tension between various countries around the world that have said, we want to see the processing happening in country. Now, Saudi Arabia is brilliantly positioned on the superhighway between Asia and Europe that runs through the Gulf, runs through the Red Sea rather, and runs through the Suez Canal. So it's a logical extension of that for Saudi Arabia to want to mobilize its energy surplus, combine it with its enormous workforce that it's potentially got to put to work here, and implant along the coast of the Red Sea significant refining capacity. Now, to ensure, though, that that product actually is mobilized and sent to the refineries in Saudi Arabia, rather than going to other countries, whether they be China or elsewhere, we really need to see companies like Ma'aden, other Saudi companies involved in the mining space, extending their reach by buying mining operations around the world, and to ensure that that then flow of material actually will be coming to the refineries established within the kingdom and utilizing the resources of both human and energetic that the country has to ensure that the value added essentially drops off here. And to talk about refineries in the DRC is all well and good, but as we've seen, attempts by the DRC to reclaim the refining capacity from China back into the DRC have essentially failed. The only country that's really achieved much on that front has been Indonesia. The best way that you can ensure that you get the product so that you can refine it is to actually own the assets. And as we've seen with Manara, particularly taking 20% stake in Vale's base metal division, this is the way that it will be achieved. You've got to own the assets to own the flow.
Well, thank you, Tariq. Thank you, Christopher. Just maybe to finish this first round of questions, we might have time for one or two sentences of concluding thoughts for each one of you, but I'd like to finish with Tariq. When you look at regional alternative, Pakistan actually offers an interesting set of assets and an option for processing here. However, Pakistan is one of those jurisdictions that has been kind of looked down from investors and been seen as challenging at some level. How can you try to attract investors better and make the case for a country like Pakistan that it can play its role in terms of the global supply chains?
Yeah, Pakistan recently has been facing a lot of challenges with the problem of access to capital. You need resources to exploit resources. If there are no resources available, you cannot do anything. So the main reason for this was the fiasco, the Reko Diq fiasco. And that has been resolved, fortunately now. We are all aware of that. The project is active. They are updating their resource and feasibility studies. If you look at the map, this is the Tatian copper belt. There are three main ore bodies that has been identified so far. There is Sarchashma in Iran, Reko Diq in Pakistan, and Misanak in Afghanistan. There are a lot of other resources that awaits discovery. Some of them could be as big as Reko Diq or even bigger than Reko Diq. It's just a matter of time to come and do the discovery. Now, what have we done so far to reverse the events or the effects of the events that has left a lot of doubts with the investors? First of all, we have done the Investment Protection Act to protect the investors who come into Pakistan. And whatever happened with the Reko Diq case should not be repeated again. The investors cannot be taken to any court of law within Pakistan by any entity or individual. So that ensures that they are protected with their investment and with the asset that they are investing into. Number two is the creation of SIFC. This is the Special Investment Facilitation Council. It's a single window operation to make all those things easy for the investor to come in doing the, there are a lot of departments involved to get your permitting done. So this is basically the platform that will make doing business easier for the investors. And it will also avoid the bureaucratic hurdles that normally people encounter in countries of the similar environment.
Thank you, Tariq. Maybe when we all contribute very well in terms of this question of diversification of supply chains, of different options for processing hubs. I'd like maybe to invite you just maybe to react to what was said here and have a few concluding sentences. Maybe with you start again, Ambassador Pham.
Okay, thank you. No, I share the sentiments of my fellow panelists here. I think we all believe we're here because we believe that there's a future, and that future transition cannot occur without increasing mining, but that can only be done responsibly in partnership with the areas that are being exploited, in partnership across the super region. And I think this conference, I compliment the host for having us here, third year in a row, and I think the opportunities and the networks here will open up hopefully a brighter future than the years we've lived through.
Thank you. Jean, if I can turn to you for those thoughts.
Thank you. Just like we put a nickel refinery in Newfoundland and Labrador, we're looking here at doing a magnesium project using olivine, local olivine to produce magnesium, green magnesium, which is a lot less polluting than what's happening in China. So that's a project that we're focusing on right here, and we're looking forward to working with the people of Saudi Arabia and the kingdom.
Roland, maybe if you can bring your knowledge there.
Pretty similar to everything that was said. I think it's phenomenal to see the energy here, the entrepreneurial spirit at a country level. Having spent the last few years doing a project in Europe, it is very different there. So I think the energy is phenomenal, and I have no doubt that there will be opportunities here. And like I said, if we can join both supply chains, it's a win-win situation. And to diversify from China, I think it's one of the serious options for Europe.
Craig, maybe.
Absolutely. So I think that the mining industry is changing right now, changing drastically as well. And then it's not so much more about the mining, it's about the processing portion of that as well. And the processing capabilities, especially with these critical materials moving forward, have to be localized in regions where they're going to be utilized, where it makes more sense logistically moving forward. What's very enviable, I guess, in the kingdom right now is the fact that they have all the logistics, they have the expertise for that, but most importantly, they have the ability to go to scale. Because the mining, I guess, world of tomorrow is going to be about clusters of a number of different critical materials being put together to build out the infrastructure to move forward to actually supply the automobiles of the future, the grid storage, so on and so forth. So it's a very unique time that we're in right now. This is almost like kind of being back at the Industrial Revolution, I guess. Nobody quite knows where it's going, but they know the direction is positive.
No surprise, Christopher, you're next in line, literally.
Yeah, thank you for that. The reality is, the old adage in the property sector is location, location, location. You add to that cheap and abundant energy, the kingdom wins, hands down, in looking to be a processing hub, not just for Europe and Asia, but for the world.
Perfect. And Tarek, maybe outside of Pakistan, what's your view here on the ideas of having a regional hub for processing?
Yeah, the majors used to be the real decision makers in the past. Now, if you look at the requirements that we face, we need 1,400 million tons of copper alone to meet the 2050 target. So you need to have the juniors, the artisanal and small-scale miners come into play to try to meet that challenge. So what is required is to have all those small processing facilities, for example, like flotation cells, as small as 100 tons per day, up to probably maybe as big as 1,000 tons per day processing capacity to be installed at the mine site, so that those low-grade ore is upgraded to 25-30% and then shipped to the smelter.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your insight. I know I've been asking to just put in a few minutes a lot of your knowledge. I was very privileged to have longer conversations with you, so I know you had much more to say, but I want to say thank you for your insight here of this panel.